So let's start with Paddington. How has he changed since the events of the first film?
He's living with the Browns in 32 Windsor Gardens, and he's very happy, and he's got a lovely home. And he's also become a kind of linchpin of the community. He's made friends wherever he goes, as Paddington does, and he's got to know the neighbours and the people on Portobello Road, and he really feels at home in London. And what we wanted to do in this film is send him out into the bigger, wider world and see how that copes with Paddington and how Paddington copes with that.
The first film was obviously a massive success, both critically and commercially. Were you immediately on board for making a sequel?
Well, we always hoped there would be a sequel. Like, there's lots of Paddington stories that Michael Bond wrote and lots of books, so there's loads of source material, and the hope was that the character could be a recurring character rather than a sort of one-off. So I think as it found its place around the world, certainly the wheels began to turn, and people, we were sort of talking about a sequel fairly early. And it's just very nice to be able to revisit this world and this cast and these amazing people that I get to work with and have another go. So I feel very lucky.
So there was no scepticisms at all about making a sequel?
No, I don't think so. No, it wasn't a kind of, oh, well, they're doing, Taxi Driver 2. This time it's a limo hire company. So it's, it was a slightly more natural choice than that.
Even more than the first film, I think, Paddington 2 clearly has an unparalleled love of London.
Right, yes.
Did you enjoy exploring the city in such a rich, flamboyant fashion?
It's very nice to get to go to all these places and sort of have the run of them. It's extraordinary, the people who would let us come and have a look round their buildings and see if we could film there. And so, there's a real joy in that for me as someone who lives here and likes old buildings. And I suppose we didn't really set out to make a love letter to London, but I think Aunt Lucy's love of London that she has as a character, and Paddington's love of London that comes from that and having made his home here, becomes weirdly infectious. And you start sort of seeing the city through their eyes and wondering at how splendid it can be, and wanting to show it off to its best, which isn't always easy because it was often raining.
Oh, yeah.
But we tried to make it feel sunny and happy through the magic of television.
Yeah, well, I thought you made London look absolutely beautiful.
Oh, terrific. Thank you.
And obviously, there's not only a love of London, but a love for Paddington Bear, the character himself.
Absolutely.
As a fan, how does it feel to approach the material which you grew up reading?
Oh, well, it's great, and they're really the gift that keeps on giving, because, they're short stories, but they really do, there's so much in them, they're really rich, and there's much more kind of depth of character than you kind of, I suppose, than I realised when I was reading them. You sort of go, well, he's Paddington, he gets in a scrape. But then when you sort of come back to it, sort of going, well, what's the narrative arc and what's he thinking? And, sort of digging into it a bit more. And there's so much detail in the Michael Bond stories, and it's really, the character is all there. You've just got to sort of hunt for it and find a kind of longer narrative that can sustain these moments. But things like the barbers and the window cleaning and various bits and bobs all the way through, even the idea of an antique and a present for Aunt Lucy and all of those things are really in the story. So it's nice to be able to cherry pick a sort of, a pick and mix, I suppose, and then sort of string them together.
Both Paddington movies have a very unique and almost personal style. It feels almost more like Wes Anderson than Disney. I was just wondering, was it difficult to preserve such a sort of vibrant and colourful touch to such a mainstream movie?
I think when I first spoke to David about making the first film, which was about 8 years ago now or something ridiculous, one of the first things I said was, I wanted to sort of do for London what Jean-Pierre Jeunet had done for Paris and Amélie, and that was a huge sort of touchstone, and The Umbrellas of Cherbourg was another one, and try and make this kind of idealised sort of storybook world, because Paddington is a talking animal, and you sort of feel if you walk down a London road and it felt like the London of a kind of Naked or a Mike Leigh film or something, it would feel so sort of disconnected, and I think it wouldn't really work. And it felt like you have to try and make Paddington as naturalistic as possible and the world as kind of heightened as possible. And then people going, oh, hello, Paddington, good morning, feels like the most organic thing in the world. So I think for the film to work, it has to have that sort of heightened, slightly stylised feeling, and it seems to lend itself to the material.
Brilliant. Well, thank you very much for meeting with me.
Too.
It's been a pleasure to speak.
You too.